Welcome to our Tuesday webinar, LawTalk. We'll be discussing handling the holidays in the classroom and what is legal and allowable in the state of Tennessee. We're delighted to have you on this webinar with us. I will be mailing you a certificate of completion for your professional development tomorrow morning, so just look for it in your email at that time. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Shepard. If you have any questions for Mike, he is our General Counsel for the Professional Educators of Tennessee. You can type them in the questions chat or chat bar, and we will respond to those by the end of the session. Thank you very much, and I thank you for Mike for presenting for us this evening.
Hello, everyone. This is Mike Shepard. Welcome to the continuing series called Law Talk, designed to continue to support our educators through continuous education. And tonight we're, as Bethany stated, we're talking about the holidays and what it means to teachers, educators, administrators, and how do we handle all the busy things that go on during the holidays and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. So as we move through this, we hope you'll have questions and stop us and ask anything that comes to mind. Any incidents that you have experienced that are relative to this presentation. We're very interested in hearing real-life situations. So you're the ones out there that are doing the work, and you're involved in the environment. So therefore, we're very interested in your perspective. A lot of people believe that you're not allowed to say Merry Christmas or celebrate the Christmas holidays, and that is simply not true. And our rights under the Constitution guarantee us that. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution says, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. No court has ever ruled that the Constitution demands that school officials need to censor Christmas carols, eliminate all references to Christmas, or silence those who celebrate Christmas. So Merry Christmas is fine. The Christmas vacation, go for it. Closing on religious holidays such as Christmas is perfectly acceptable. Now there are some things, parameters that you need to be aware of, but you know, secular symbols, religious symbols of the holiday are perfectly allowable as long as you follow some few basic rules. So, you know, our country was founded on tradition and the celebration traditionally of Christmas, and it is part of our country's history. So, you know, we want to make sure that everyone understands that celebrating Christmas in an historical way and even in a celebratory way is fine. As far as the First Amendment, do you have to recognize all holidays? And the answer to that is no. And the First Amendment Establishment Clause does not require school officials to suppress any seasonal regional expressions. So if you look at the laws as they've developed in our country, it's important to note a case by the name of, and captioned by Stone v. Graham. The First Amendment Establishment Clause, as we talked about, is the source of basically our freedom to celebrate Christmas. And, you know, every year I know that many teachers have lesson plans that study the history of Christmas. And we, you know, that is perfectly fine in Tennessee and basically almost in all states in our in the United States. So what we'd like to do now is talk about religious symbols and what that means to you in the school environment. The public school officials may include in their display symbols any nativity scene without offending the Constitution if they have an educational reason for doing so. The Supreme Court has held that the display of a nativity scene is constitutional when displayed along with secular symbols for legitimate secular purposes, such as to celebrate the holiday and to depict the origins of the holiday. Lower federal courts have also held that public schools can include both religious and secular symbols in Christmas displays, school calendars, and holiday programs. So, as far as what you can and can't do, you cannot limit or encourage Christianity in the school system, but you can certainly celebrate. You can offer up the normal annual symbols. The Constitution provides that freedom. It even provides the freedom to distribute material and literature. But we find that it's far better if you're going to celebrate Christmas that it may be just, you should celebrate Hanukkah as well. That keeps you from being accused of only celebrating and advocating one religion, which is against our constitutional right of freedom of speech and establishment of religion. So secular symbols are also fine, nativity scene, and those are all allowable under the Establishment Clause. As we look at the history of our rights and freedoms in our country, as stated, we have to look at our First Amendment. And I'd like to take a look at the case of Kissinger versus Mexico Academy and Central School. The district court in that case held that once a school invited community members to contribute bricks containing personal messages to a school walkway, it could not prohibit a message because it expressed a religious viewpoint. So once a forum is open for expression, it is of no legal significance, again, if only the religious speakers respond. In summary of that case and others preceding it, student expression may not be censored by school officials simply because it is religious. So we want to be clear that religious expression is fine. You cannot encourage one religion, and if you remember those two very important tenets, then your holidays will be open and even as they're supposed to be under the Constitution. So under the case of Morgan v. Swanson, the Fifth Circuit upheld an elementary school student's right to distribute candy cane-shaped pens and a laminated card entitled The Legend of the Candy Cane, which explained the Christian origin of candy canes. To the same extent, other students were allowed to distribute gifts to classmates at the class annual winter break party. The Fifth Circuit judges explained that discrimination against student speech solely on the basis of religious viewpoint strikes at the very heart of the First Amendment, which protects all students from viewpoint discrimination based on private, non-disruptive student-to-student speech. Therefore, in summary, students, regardless of grade level, thus have the First Amendment right to express a religious viewpoint to another student without fear of reprisal. In school assignments, it becomes very interesting, what reading materials are assigned to students, what essays they're allowed to write, and basically what clothing they wear, which is a form of expression and a form of First Amendment freedom. School officials cannot prohibit students from conveying religious sentiments through their school assignments or the selection of reading materials based on the religious viewpoint, as long as it falls within the educational scope of the assignment. Now, for an example of that would be a student is asked to write an essay on the most influential person in their life. That student is free to write an essay on the influence of Jesus Christ. Likewise, school officials may not prohibit students from wearing clothing that conveys a religious message through words or symbols due to the religious viewpoint expressed on the clothing. At this point, we've talked about the Establishment Clause, where that comes from, where our freedoms of expression originate. I'd like to open it up at this point for any questions, any discussions of real experiences that you may have had in your teaching background. Do we have any questions, comments?
So it's important that teachers realize that the history of the Nativity and the history even of Saint Nick or Santa Claus, that can all be taught because that is part of the history of the United States, history of the world. Is that correct?
That's correct. That can be part of your lesson plan, and the holiday traditions can become part of your lesson plan. If you're a third grade teacher and you want to go through the history of Christmas, show a holiday poster, talk about the story of Jesus' birth, even reading sections from the Bible, which is a part of the history of Christmas, certainly. And you can also talk about your family experiences and how you celebrate Christmas. You can on Hanukkah, you can talk about the Festival of Lights, and you can talk about 168 BC, before Jesus was born, with a discussion of the Jewish people in Palestine, and so on and so forth. So, Santa Claus, how did Santa Claus come to be? How did this, some say that he was a leader in the early Christian church. His name was Nicholas. He supposedly lived in Asia Minor, which is now Turkey, in about 300 AD. So those are examples of what you can do within your lesson plan that are perfectly acceptable and in no way suggests or encourages belief in a certain religion. Any other questions on the topics?
Yes, we have heard that in one district, and I guess it's Sumner County, that teachers aren't even allowed to wear a cross. So how could students be allowed to wear symbols or T-shirts or whatever?
Well, in my personal opinion, I question that rule, and legally I would apply the Establishment Clause and the First Amendment to that, and I would, there are other people on the other side that argue that this is endorsing a religion or in some way, shape, or form encouraging to believe certain concepts and beliefs, and I would say argue vigorously in a constitutional debate on that set of circumstances that student has a right to wear that cross. The ACLU has come into these areas and fought stringently to oppose the right to do that, and there have been agreed orders issued between the school system and the ACLU, but that's one school district. That does not represent the entire country.
Okay, I have another question. I've dealt with a child that was of the Jehovah's Witness faith, could not participate in any parties because it was against their religion. They had to be taken to another room so as not to offend their families. That's something to think about. That actually happened to me as well. People don't celebrate anything. so
I think reasonable accommodations in a celebration atmosphere is fine, but I don't think you have to, in my legal opinion, have to take that child out of the classroom when you're teaching the history of Christianity or the celebration thereof. Now, I understand what you're saying about the party and things like that. I think reasonable accommodations should and could be made. Is there any other comments from the author of that question?
That was mainly just a statement, because they do not celebrate, and there's almost always one or two in every class that aren't allowed to celebrate.
It's more relative to the celebration than it is
right.
the study. Okay.
Right.
Real quick, I'd like to end with what the public chapter number 687, the law in Tennessee. This was a bill passed on July 1st, 2014, and if you look at the Tennessee Code Annotated, you don't see a large history of legislation on this topic, but basically it says, number one, an LEA may educate students about the history of traditional winter celebrations and allow students and LEA staff to offer traditional greetings regarding the celebrations, including, but not limited to, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays, except as provided in another section, which really has no bearing in what we're going over today. An LEA may display on school property scenes or symbols associated with traditional winter celebrations, including a menorah or a Christmas image, such as a nativity scene or Christmas tree, if the display includes a scene or symbol of, number one, more than one religion, or two, one religion and at least one secular scene or symbol. A display relating to a traditional winter celebration may not include a message that encourages adherence to a particular religious belief. So any other questions?
So the symbols can be displayed, they just can't encourage them to be for one religion over another.
Right, and you also have to be aware of, if somebody wants to have another type of religious scene or secular scene, you have to be at least receptive to that under 49.610B. You can display, as it says, on school property, scenes or symbols, if as long as you include more than one religion. So that's Tennessee law. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's going to be in Ohio, but our rights and freedoms originate from the Constitution, the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, and that cuts both ways. You can celebrate Christmas, but you can't stifle or have a chilling effect on the rights of others who want to celebrate and exhibit symbols. So we look at this issue from study to celebration to symbols and expression through all of those three. Celebration is different than study. Symbols is different than study and celebration. And the one thing to remember is not to encourage one religion. So,
if there's no more questions, we'll end this now. And like I said, this session was recorded. I know it was a short session, but it was still one that people just need to hear again so they know that they do have rights and not to be afraid. If there are any more questions, you can send it to me, bethany.bowman@proedtn.org, or you can send it to Mike at legal, Legal, legal@proedtn.org. We're delighted to have you, and thank you for being a participant this evening.